Today, I want to start with a quote from Winston Churchill. And if you don't know who that was, he was the British Prime Minister during the Second World War. And what he said was to be really happy and really safe, one ought to have at least two or three hobbies, and they must all be real. Back when I was younger, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and I would go with them to all different types of places, and we would do all different types of things. Literally anything that you could imagine, we were probably doing it. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but we did a lot of stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And they would talk to people everywhere we went, and they were all well known within their respective communities. I didn't quite realize it or conceptualize it at the time, but they were always doing something, and it was almost always based around things that they enjoyed or skills that they had built throughout their lives. A couple of my grandparents even had part time jobs doing things that really mattered to them on a personal level, and they were able to make their own schedules, which, once you get a little older, not being on somebody else's time and having control of your schedule is pretty important, in my opinion. But anyway, on my mom's side, her parents owned a local meat, produce, and seafood store when they were younger. So when I was a kid, my grandfather helped manage a deli at a local store, and I swear I never saw him in there without a big smile on his face. And it was always really cool to show up there with my parents if we were shopping or whatever. And there's Grandpa. Hey, how's it going? He's always happy to see us, give us a free slice of the lunch meat or whatever, and he's got all his buddies back there with him. He's helping the customers out and all that kind of stuff. It was just cool as a kid, man, to go in the store and there's your grandfather and he's always happy, all that kind of stuff. But back to the story. So his wife, my mom's mom, she actually watched my brother and I when we were kids after school and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of were her job effectively, at least during that time, and we would spend a lot of time with her. Um, and on my dad's side, his parents had split up long before I was born and they each remarried. So I pretty much had an additional set of grandparents on that side. And my dad's mom, she was a really gentle and creative soul. She had been an art teacher when she was younger, and after she retired, she was constantly knitting or caring for animals of all types, literally anything you could imagine. She had a ton of cats, but then like she would she would feed the wild animals. I don't know. I know they kind of say you're not really supposed to do that, but she would just try and care for them however she could. And it was just so cool to see her connect with these wild animals, so to speak, and they had become more docile and friendly and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you still obviously couldn't bring them in the house or whatever, but they weren't like you would expect, acting crazy and everything. Like they really were friendly. Um, anyway, she also really loved reading and frequented a local bookstore, and she built lasting friendships with anyone and everybody who worked there, despite being quite a bit older. And it was really cool, especially looking back on it, to see how you can connect with people just through talking and being friendly, and how much of an impact those connections can make, because she would really go out of her way to help these people with their daily lives, like whatever they would need. That's the type of level she was on with them, and it was cool. Like they all different walks of life, and here's my grandmother, doing what she can to help. Um, and like building on that, she really helped foster my love of reading at a young age. It's still something that I do, still something I enjoy doing, and it was really, she was a real inspiration for me. Like to this day, I don't know if I would have got into that if it wasn't for her, so to speak. But her husband, he worked at a Boeing factory for many years, and after he retired, he became an avid flyer of model airplanes of all shapes and sizes. And I always thought his collection was really cool, and as a kid, I was blown away watching him maneuver these planes through the air and then land them. And I just think to myself, like, man, if I had those controls, I know that thing would just be slamming into the ground. Like, um, my dad's dad, he worked for Luke and Steel for a long time, and then he actually started his own consulting company before he retired. And after retiring, he was a major contributor at a local sportsman's club where he helped out with literally anything he could, anything they would ask of him, he was there. And he would operate the heavy machinery, help build add-ons, reshape the property, clear a tree, like anything you could imagine, he was doing it. And another thing he really enjoyed was woodworking, and he would make so many different types of stuff. But the one thing that really impresses me to this day was this big grandfather clock that used to sit in their living room, and I would always just think, man, I wouldn't even know where to start if I wanted to make that thing. The certain parts of it were so intricate, and he was always really proud to talk about how he crafted it, and it was cool to hear him talk about that kind of stuff and just listen to him engage with his past, so to speak. And his wife, she had a few different hobbies. One of them was playing the harp, and another, she worked at this historical reenactment type thing. I don't really know what it was, but it was like a place, and you could go there or whatever with your family, and it'd be all these different people dressed in the outfits from the time period that they were reenacting. They would talk like they were from that time. They would show you how people lived during that time. I forget what exactly it was that they were reenacting, but it wasn't like just some thing like people would do like a Civil War reenactment for a day or whatever. But it was an actual place that they did this on a daily basis, and she would do it on the weekends, I think. But I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting and cool. But the point of these little background summaries on my grandparents was they were all really happy people. They really shaped my life, and they had a lot going on despite being older. Each day, they had plenty of activities to keep them busy and engaged with life. And when I look at the world today, I can't help but notice the really stark contrast from the multifaceted and downright fulfilling lives that my grandparents led to what I see in most people today. Exploring the widespread lack of fulfillment today, once again, and especially comparing that to my grandparents, I think having a hobby goes a long way towards fulfillment or at least feeling content. Think about the most interesting person you know. What makes them so intriguing and what's so special about them? Chances are they're always doing something. Chances are they have some type of skill or talent or experience that's somewhat unique or cool to talk about or even useful in daily life. What are these skills, talents, and experiences? And where do they come from? Things that they do in their free time. That's hobbies. Before I go any further, I want to be clear on what I consider a hobby, what a hobby is to me. So, to me, a hobby can be any action or activity that you engage in for fun outside of work. Most likely, it'll be something that you're drawn to. Maybe it's really fascinating to you. Maybe it's just something to do, but chances are it captivates your interest and you find it engaging. So, the most important thing to me is that it brings you some level of happiness and joy to engage in this activity, whatever it is. It's a little windy today, so I don't know. The camera's shaking a little, my hair's blowing around. But anyway, another aspect of a hobby that I personally believe is important, especially to maintaining interest long term, is the ability to improve over time. And a hobby can be pretty much anything you could imagine, from playing an instrument, working out, doing art, building Legos, reading books, cooking, gardening, hiking, traveling. There's so many different directions you could go, so many, whatever you're interested in, you could probably find a hobby in that area. And I think everyone needs a hobby, at least one. I mean, ideally two to three, like Winston Churchill said at the beginning. But this is because it provides something you can look forward to, and it eliminates or at least really reduces boredom. I think a lot of people today struggle with boredom when they're on their own. They don't have anything to engage with that captivates their mind or occupies their time. So they'll default to looking at their phone or watching TV. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you're being honest with yourself, does that really seem like a good use of your downtime? Is it really going to bring fulfillment, or is it just a step above doing nothing? To me, it seems kind of like an anxious response. I don't have anything to do. I don't know how to cope with that. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So let me just get out my phone. Let me just turn on the TV. There's always something to do, no matter how unproductive it is. There's always something you can scroll on. There's always the news or some TV show or some sitcom or whatever. That's where your hobby comes in. When you're bored, when you're looking to fill some free time, that's when you engage with your hobby. No matter what the situation is, you'll never feel like you're wasting your time. You'll never have that anxious type feeling where you don't know what to do. You'll have something that you can fill that time with. And instead of just sitting on your phone, you can engage with something that you actually care about that's really meaningful to you, and not just be endlessly scrolling or watching some reruns on TV that really aren't important, if we're being honest. Hobbies are also great for decompressing and shifting your focus and energy to something that you really care about and are interested in. And just like a couple quick examples, if your work sucked today, now you know what you can do to cheer yourself up. You're stressed out with life in general, it was a tough week. You know what you can do to distract yourself for a few hours. You don't have any plans for the weekend? All right, you know what you're gonna do. You're gonna lock in and work on your hobby, work on your craft. It can allow you to slip out of reality for a little bit and enter a world where the only thing that matters is what you're doing. And that kind of thing where you really focus your attention and concentration on one task really help open your mind and help you lock back in on reality after the fact. I think it's good to have something like that where your concentration and energy are locked in on only one thing and the rest of the world is temporarily shut out. But in my opinion, one of the keys here is that it's only for a period of time. And there's a few different reasons for this. So, first of all, I can't advocate for escapism. I think it's important to get away for a little bit, forget your problems, but only temporarily. And like I said a second ago, ideally, this is going to allow you to come back into real life. You'll feel fresh, recharged, you're ready to get back to it. You can address whatever's plaguing you mentally, physically, whatever. You'll be ready to get back to real life in an effective manner. You won't have that burnout fatigue type feeling. And on the other hand, or not on the other hand, uh, also too much time and energy or focus can cause burnout with your hobby, and then you could end up losing interest for a bunch of different reasons. And going off that with hobbies, as with pretty much everything, I think moderation is the key, and I also think diversification is pretty important. So, as Churchill pointed out, you should ideally have more than one hobby. And this will really reduce the risk of that burnout and interest loss because you can shift from one hobby to the next. You never fixate too exclusively on one to the point where you lose interest or get frustrated. And just like a kind of good way to visualize this or conceptualize this, I should say, is if you think about going to the gym, you're not going to work out the same thing every day. You're not going to bench press every single day, are you? No, no way. Even if you don't go to the gym, you know that doesn't make sense. It'd be way too much of a narrow focus. You would probably get bored of that pretty quick. Your muscles would get fatigued. You'd have to stop. And the same thing is really true in regards to hobbies and interests. If you overdo it, it's going to lead to mental fatigue and disinterest in that activity. And an example from my own life here is reading, which I know I mentioned before that I enjoy that, but I really make sure to vary the topics and switch it up. So I typically follow like a cycle, so to speak, where I'll read something historical, something with some scientific basis, and then some type of novel, usually by a classic author, just because I'm really curious how these people got such acclaim in the past. Obviously, they were doing something right, but I'm really interested in learning the material within the historical and scientific books. They can get pretty heavy, and then I'll be like, man, I just read like X amount of pages on this, and it took me however long, and that was pretty intense. I learned a lot, but that was some thick material, so to speak. So it's really important that I fluctuate and intersperse the novels, because otherwise, it just I'll kind of lose that drive to keep going and pick up that next book as soon as I put the other one down, despite how much I may or may not be interested in the contents. And I mean, obviously, from buying the book, I'm interested in the content. So I don't know. That's just a quick example of how I engage with variation, even within a single hobby, because I know that I can get burned out. My point here is that you don't want to overdo it. Even something that brings you joy can eventually get old if you don't introduce any alternatives. And it's also crucial here that if you hit a roadblock, you switch things up, and it's really possible. It's definitely possible to get frustrated with a hobby. Depending on the hobby, it might even be likely. And when this occurs, this is where it's going to be important to switch it up and do something else for a little bit. And you just got to remember, this isn't giving up, it's just taking a break. And you got to also remember your hobby's supposed to bring you joy and temporary relief from your other problems. So if it's making you frustrated or upset, you aren't really doing what you set out to do, are you? you're not going to get that relief. You're just going to end up coming back to real life more frustrated because what you tried to do to disengage didn't work out. If you take that idea of variation further, I think it's important to have social hobbies as well as individual hobbies. Having social and individual hobbies will allow you to engage in different activities depending on how you're feeling and what kind of experience you want. You're giving yourself options on how to enjoy yourself in your free time. So you can do things that you care about individually, or you can do things with others who share your interests depending on what you want to do or how you feel. Like if you aren't feeling really social on a given day, you don't have to be. You can engage with your individual hobby. You can do something at your house. You can go out on a hike solo or whatever. But if you're craving some human interaction, you know you have that option as well. And I think the flexibility here is important because too much social time, it can be exhausting, especially for some people, and too much time by yourself can definitely get lonely. I know finding the balance is easier said than done, but I think having hobbies that you can enjoy with others will help introduce you to like minded people with similar interests, and you can build friendships while you're also engaging in your hobby. Having these kind of personal relationships is an important part of life, and building a friendship on a common interest ensures that you'll always have something to talk about because the foundation of the friendship is based on a mutual hobby. An example that I saw, but I didn't personally experience, was with music. I don't play an instrument, but in college, a few of my friends were in a band together. They'd practice together, then they'd play at some bars from time to time in town. And even though I wasn't in the band, it was really cool to see them practice and improve and grow together during that time. And this brings me to pretty much the last thing I want to talk about today, which is one of the most important parts of hobbies, in my opinion, which is the ability for improvement. And the ability for improvement is not an integral part of a hobby, but I think it provides an added benefit and a motivation to continue. Japanese have a concept that I like called Kaizen, which essentially means continuous improvement, getting better at something over time through continued effort and perseverance. I think this translates itself well into hobbies, and it also fits well with the 10,000 hours concept that I mentioned during the importance of trying. The more time that you spend on your hobby, the more likely it is that you'll improve from where you started at, even if you don't approach the hobby with a goal in mind. Experiencing Kaizen or continuous improvement at whatever you engage in will provide satisfaction and pride as you see your skills increase. This will likely inspire you to continue on the journey and increase your commitment and interest in that hobby. Think about that interesting person from your life that we thought about before. Through your dedication to your hobby, you're on your way to becoming that very person yourself. Once again, this shows how closely tied hobbies are with trying and achieving your dream future. And for more on that, go back to my video on the importance of trying. I go into that in a lot more detail. But long story short, you won't get better if you don't try. This is also a commentary on how they'll add hobbies, that is, will add purpose and fulfillment to your life. Actually experiencing improvement over time is really inspiring and it'll build pride within you. It's also really fulfilling and validating to know that the time and effort you put in led to noticeable improvement. It shows you that your time was used well and you achieved something that has a personal importance. Once again, just like with the importance of trying, you're proving to yourself that you care about yourself. You're proving to yourself your positive qualities: perseverance, dedication, commitment, hard work, all those types of things. When you engage with your hobby and you improve over time, you're proving that you have those qualities to yourself and you're just going to end up building your confidence. For example, maybe you want to begin woodworking like my grandfather. At first, you might not be comfortable using the different machines, your workmanship might be poor, you might be discouraged, but seriously, if you stick with it, or if you connect with other people that can mentor you and show you how to do different stuff, next thing you know, you're going to really start to notice an increase in the quality of your work, and you might even reach the point where you can pretty much make anything that you think of just from scratch. How many people do you know that can say that? Probably not too many. I don't know too many. The same could apply to something like the gym. At first, you're probably going to be pretty far from your dream future, whether that's achieving certain numbers, like you want to bench 315, you want to squat 405. I mean, that's not really how I approach the gym, but different people have different goals. It's just like a kind of an easy example to go off. Or maybe you have a certain look that you're going for with your physique, and once you start, it might seem unrealistic. It's probably going to be pretty damn far away, but through continuous improvement, you'll get there. It's going to be slow. It's going to be hard, but you'll get there. And I don't know. I think hobbies also, that's just a little commentary on delayed gratification, which is another important aspect of hobbies and life in general. But anyway, how many people give up before they get there? How many people are going to quit because they can't figure out how to use this machine? Either it's funny, it applies to both things, either woodworking or the gym. How many people are going to give up? Probably most, but if you don't, you'll be that rare exception. That'll just make you even more proud of yourself. And I think this really can be applied to most hobbies, and it's one of the great aspects of hobbies. You can keep improving and refining your abilities over time as long as you stay the course, and the progress and satisfaction will come. And just as a final endpoint, I think the idea of Kaizen really shows why certain things can't be considered hobbies. Not that it's the core component of hobbies, but it is something that I consider important to hobbies. And the main thing that really comes to mind here is social media. Like, you can't get better at scrolling on social media, whatever the platform is. There's no way to improve with that. There's no room for growth, and there isn't really a perceived benefit. And to me, this kind of showcases the difference between a habit and a hobby. I think a habit can become, I said that backwards. I think a hobby can become a habit, but a habit cannot become a hobby. Once again, hobbies don't have to incorporate Kaizen, but I do think it will make them more engaging and compelling, and you'll be more likely to stick with it over time. If you don't have any hobbies right now, don't worry. Do not worry. It's totally fine. Just try and think of some things that you enjoy but you haven't done recently. Like for me, with the reading example, I used to read so much when I was a kid, and then high school and college, literally 8 years plus, I barely read at all. And it just kind of hit me one day like, damn, I used to really like that when I was a kid. Why did I stop doing that? And now here I am reading books again, learning different things, go to the store, spend some time browsing around like, oh, what should I grab today? What titles are catching my eye? What do I want to learn about? And then that's something I can look forward to, grabbing new books, and then can look forward to reading just like to gain knowledge or just to wind down at the end of the day. So just think about things that you used to enjoy. What's something that you always thought was cool? You can give that a try. And if you need some more inspiration, feel free to watch my last video, The Importance of Trying. That might give you some more ideas to go off, basically. But once again, it's not really what I say. It's not really what's important to me with your hobbies and everything. It should be something that means something to you, something that you can engage in. So that's all for today, guys. Thanks for the time. I hope it was worth your while, and enjoy the rest of your day.